10 spine-chilling small-town horror tales, unearthed nightmarish secrets that will haunt you. Sarah Patterson thought she knew Cedar Falls, the quaint suburban town that wrapped around her like a warm blanket. Trees lining the streets whispered friendly secrets as children laughed in front yards, and the air was filled with the scent of fresh-baked cookies. But as the sun fell behind the horizon, shadows twisted in ways that felt too alive, too watchful. Each night, when she returned from her shift at the diner, the house seemed to breathe, filling with an unsettling chill that slithered down her spine. It all began when Lucas and Emily awoke in the middle of the night, their faces pale and eyes wide as saucers. "Mommy, the Evans are crying," Lucas whispered, trembling under the covers. Sarah dismissed it at first, assuming the kids had watched something on TV that scared them. But the feeling in her gut twisted there was something more. The Evans family lived next door, always smiling, always lending a hand. But now, the whispers of long-lost children resurfaced, flickering like old film reels in her mind, stories of kids disappearing, swallowed whole by the chilling October fog. At first, she rolled her eyes at the tales, considering them pure fiction. But as the children's nightmares worsened, morphing from simple fears to terrifying visions of the Evans home, a place they had always considered safe, Sarah felt the air grow thick with dread. They were laughing, but then it turned into screams. "Mommy!" Emily stammered, her small fingers clutching the blanket tightly. It was then the hairs on the back of Sarah's neck stood straight. What darkness lurked beyond those cheery facades? With each new instance a hint of a shadow behind the curtains, the ominous creak of the floorboards. A visceral panic gripped Sarah. The Evans' smiles felt like masks, slipping further away with every interaction. They became more sinister, their laughter now echoing with something far from friendly. When Sarah stumbled upon an old photograph of the Evans family, framed and gathering dust in a field guide, her breath hitched. A child that had vanished was nestled within their joyous group. The world spun, a cacophony of fear enveloping her. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. That night, after putting the kids to bed, every corner in the house felt alive with unseen eyes. The walls were pressing in, shadows creeping across the floor, flickering in a dance only they understood. A noise rippled through the silence, a soft knock echoing from the front door, sending Sarah's heart into a frenzy. Her breath hitched as she crept toward it, eyes glued to the peephole. That familiar smile was now a grotesque memory. It wasn't the Evans, it was their whispered secrets that coiled tightly around her heart, threatening to squeeze. She hesitated, fingers hovering over the doorknob, caught between trust and terror. What awaited her on the other side? Only one thing was certain, the nightmares were no longer hers alone. In this moment of fear, she felt the weight of every missing child loom in the air, manifesting into something far worse than legend. Something was watching, and the nightmares were only just beginning. What haunting truths lay entwined in the veins of Cedar Falls? A chill darted up Sarah's spine. She pressed her ear against the door, heart pounding, and the faint sounds of muffled weeping spilled through the wood like dark syrup. It wasn't just the Evans anymore. It was something deeper, an echo of agony reverberating from the shadows that lurked in Cedar Falls. "Mommy, don't open it!" Lucas's voice pierced her mind as she hesitated, the kids still fast asleep upstairs, oblivious to the creeping terror slithering closer. Her hands trembled, fingers wrapped tightly around the doorknob. What unseen force called from the other side? It cracked like ice, the wood protesting under the weight of what lurked beyond. Pushing down, she swung it open, the hinges creaking mournfully. The empty porch greeted her, moonlight spilling over the ground like cold silver. No sign of anyone, yet the air felt thick, charged, almost electric. It wouldn't leave her. The whispers grew louder. The sound was alluring and dreadful, weaving through her thoughts like a siren's song. Retreating inside, she slammed the door shut, the solid thud reverberating against her chest. Heart racing, Sarah rushed to the window. Drawing back the curtain, she peered through the glass. The Evans house stood silent, the front porch light flickering like a dying star. Shadows cast from the trees danced ominously against the walls, gyrating in grotesque rhythms. Suddenly, a figure darted past the window, a glimpse of white, too fast to be seen clearly. Sarah jumped back, heat flooding her cheeks, the color draining from her face. "What was that?" she whispered, frantically scanning, but nothing remained. She moved to the living room, feeling the chill deepen. The clock on the wall ticked louder, each beat echoing through the oppressive silence like a warning. What if Lucas and Emily weren't just having nightmares? What if something had finally slipped loose from the dark corners of this chilling town? As if summoned by her fear, the power flickered, plunging the room into darkness. She shuddered, the air thickening with the scent of damp earth and decay. With trembling hands, she grabbed her phone, the screen lighting up like a beacon. "Stay calm," she repeated to herself, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. That S when she heard it again, the soft sobs, closer, scratching at the very edges of her sanity. They weren't just cries. They were pleas, small, desperate voices begging for salvation. The porch swing creaked gently. Her gaze snapped toward the window, panic tightening around her throat as she caught sight of a small child standing just at the edge of her yard. The figure glowed with an eerie light, an ethereal quality in the darkness. Emily? No, this figure was dressed in a tattered white dress and hair tousled like it had been swept through a storm. Sarah squinted, stomach churning. "Who are you?" she whispered, heart racing, as the child turned, revealing hollow eyes that seemed to absorb all light. Before she could react, the gloom thickened, swallowing the room whole. The child hovered, a swirling void of shadows, and with a gasp, Sarah stumbled back, clutching her phone tighter. "Help us," it whispered, voice ethereal as it echoed around her. A scream erupted from the second floor, piercing the thick air. "Mommy!" Lucas's cry sent shockwaves through her. Panic surged as she darted towards the stairs, uncertainty clawing at her as realization washed over her something hungry had reached out, and it wasn't finished with her yet. The whispers grew louder, drowning her thoughts as a sense of dread closed in. She could feel the weight of each child, the price they paid for innocence lost. "Get away from them!" she shouted, racing up the stairs. The darkness wrapped around her like smoke, clutching at her ankles, dragging her back into the nightmare. But she couldn't look back. Not now, not when her children were in danger. What waited at the top of the stairs? Something watched from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. As Sarah ascended the staircase, every creaking step echoed like a cry for help. Her heart raced, drowning out the soft whispers that clung to her mind. The air grew colder, wrapping around her like a vice. Shadows flickered in the corners of her vision, pooling like spilled ink, ready to reach out and pull her back into the darkness. "Lucas! Emily!" she called out, voice quaking. There was no response, just the oppressive silence hanging heavily, mingling with the remnants of that nightmarish weeping that now felt like a chant, urging her on. She reached the landing, breathless and trembling. The door to the kids' room was ajar, a sliver of light spilling out like a warning. The sobs had stopped, but an unsettling hush filled the air. Clenching her fists, Sarah pushed the door open, heart thudding in her ears. The room was empty. Her stomach churned with dread as she scanned the space. The beds were made, toys untouched, leaving only the faint scent of childhood innocence. But something was off. The room felt abandoned, as if time had erased their presence. "Where are you?" The question slipped from her lips, thick with fear. Just then, a sound echoed from the window, a soft scratching, like fingernails on glass. Sarah's pulse quickened as she approached, the window curtains billowing gently as if beckoning her closer. She pulled them back and gasped. Outside, a group of shadowy children gathered, their eyes reflecting the moonlight, hollow and dark. They weren't just standing, they swayed, like reeds in a haunting breeze. They were the lost ones, the ones Sarah had seen in her nightmares. The whispers amplified, soft little voices rising in a symphony of sorrow, urging her to join them. Help us, a chill seized her. No! She barked, stepping back. Panic flooded her system, the loss of her children clawing within her. They weren't just calling for help, they were luring her into the folds of oblivion that had snatched so many before. She spun on her heel, needing to escape, but the doors slammed shut with a deafening bang. The reverberation rattled her bones. What the hell? Her voice was hoarse, frantically pressing against the barrier. Open the door! Her pleas melted into the shadows. The children outside began to chant in unison, their voices harmonizing, a chilling nursery rhyme that sent shivers down her spine. Come play with us forever. Desperation clawed at Sarah's throat. She could feel something pulsing in the air, a dark wave inviting her to relent, to step over the threshold of mortality. With trembling hands she fumbled for her phone, its light flickering dimly, a spotlight in the consuming darkness. But before she could turn it on, cold fingers traced down her neck, a phantom touch that sent ice through her veins. She swung around, but nothing was there. Just shadows, shifting and swirling, wrapping tighter around her as the room began to pulse with ominous energy. Mommy! This time, it was Lucas's voice, frantic and broken. She whirled back toward the sound, electric terror coursing through her veins. But the room twisted around her. Hang on, I'm coming! She screamed, her limbs heavy as dread poured in. How could she reach him? She was locked inside this nightmare, falling deeper into the abyss. The whispers danced, brushing against her mind, pleading, promising help us. With a wild scream, Sarah lunged for the door, but it wouldn't budge. The illumination of her phone flickered steadily before dying, plunging her back into darkness. She heard the soft scratching again. Not from the window this time, but right behind her. She turned slowly, terror rising as she took in the shape forming from the shadows, a figure emerging, dressed in tattered white, with hollow eyes glimmering in the dark. Join us, it rasped, voice echoing like her own. In that moment, the last vestiges of courage stripped away, as she understood this wasn't just a fight for her children. It was a battle for her very soul. Leave my family alone! The words cut through the gloom like a knife. As if in response, the figure smiled an unnerving twist of glee that sent her heart racing. It raised a hand, beckoning. Just then, the door burst open, revealing Lucas. Frantic, he yelled, "Mommy, don't let it take you!" A sudden dread froze her in place. The darkness shifted, and the figure stepped forward. What would she do now? What choice would save them all? The figure lunged, its hand stretching towards Sarah, fingers elongated like darkened claws ready to snatch her away. Time slowed as terror washed over her, thick and suffocating. She hesitated, caught between her instinct to flee and the suffocating pull of its presence. "Mommy! Run!" Lucas shouted, and the urgency in his voice cracked through Sarah's paralysis. She darted past the specter, racing towards her son, who stood trembling at the threshold. Just as she reached him, a cold gust swept through the room, slamming the door shut behind them. They turned and bolted down the hallway, their footsteps echoing a frantic rhythm against the oppressive stillness. Fear surged in Sarah's chest, her breath shallow and quick, like a rabbit chased by a wolf. Behind them, the figure's chilling laughter sliced through the silence. "Join us." Lucas clutched her hand tightly, his grip the only lifeline she had left. They tore through the once familiar home that now felt like a twisted maze, every corner teetering on the brink of darkness. "Where's Emily?" she gasped, her thoughts frantically cycling. Had the figure taken her daughter too? Panic clawed at her mind, gnawing at her resolve. "Do you know where she is?" Lucas shook his head, tears gleaming in his eyes. "I don't know. I thought she was here." The shadows seemed to pulse in response, as if devouring the very essence of their hope. "We have to keep moving," Sarah urged, her voice strained. She could feel the walls closing in, the whispers growing louder, urging them to turn around, to surrender. Then they heard a soft thud from the living room, a sound so muffled yet so intimate, it sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. She knew that sound. It was the noise Emily made when she played alone, a gentle echo of innocence lost. "Emily!" Sarah choked out, urgency tugging her towards the source of the sound. "Stay close." They moved into the living room, a cavernous space now shrouded in darkness. The familiar furniture morphed into grotesque shapes, the flickering light of a storm outside casting long, eerie shadows. "Mommy, I don't like it here," Lucas whimpered. "I know, sweetheart." "Just a little more," she said, forcing determination into her voice as she scanned the room. And then she saw the outline of Emily in the corner, still and silent. Relief momentarily washed over Sarah, until she realized her daughter was staring blankly at the wall, her eyes clouded as if she were entranced. "Emily! Honey!" Sarah called, her heart pounding, but there was no response. Cold dread wrapped around Sarah's heart. The whispers returned, coiling like serpents in the air. "Come to us, join us." Suddenly, a figure loomed behind Emily, blending seamlessly into the shadows, a grotesque reflection of the first. Teeth like shards of ice glimmered as it leaned closer, whispering in a hissing cadence that dripped with menace. "Come play with us forever." "No!" Sarah screamed, breaking from the trance of fear. She lunged forward, snatching Emily just as the figure reached out with clawed fingers. The girl blinked, returning to clarity, confusion masking her innocent face. "Mommy? What is happening?" "Oh, sweetheart." Sarah hugged her tight, while the shadows around them convulsed in fury. "Run!" she commanded, pushing Lucas and Emily ahead of her. They barreled back toward the hallway, but the darkness thickened, coiling like a living thing, twisting their path into an unrecognizable maze. "Why won't it let us go?" Lucas cried, panic rising in his voice. "I don't know. We have to find the door," Sarah yelled, her own heart pounding against despair. The whispers morphed into screams, suffocating their will to escape. "Join us." Forever it echoed in her mind as they stumbled blindly, a sickening chorus entwining their thoughts. The walls quivered, twisting like a distorted funhouse, ready to swallow them whole. And then, just ahead, a light flickered through the thick shadows, a glimmer of hope. There! The front door! They lunged towards it, but as they reached for the handle, something shifted behind them, a torrent of shadows pouring in, a wrathful horde of the lost ones converging. "Let go of my kids!" Sarah bellowed, adrenaline fueling her desperation as she threw herself against the door. As her fingers grasped the handle, warmth enveloped her, and she turned to see the figures closing in. In that moment of entrapment, her mind raced. The darkness was all-consuming, but maybe, just maybe, could she face the shadows, just long enough to save her children? Just as she prepared to pull the door open, she sensed a shift in the air, a presence rising behind her, as if the darkness had found its way in. Will the door lead to freedom, or will it seal their fate? As Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs, the icy air thickened, curling around her like a suffocating shroud. She turned slowly, dread taking the shape of a towering form, its eyes glinting with malice. The darkness, its very essence, was more than an enemy. It was a living nightmare, shifting and seething with intent. "Mommy!" Lucas cried, his voice a plaintive wail that pierced through the encroaching terror. "Emily, Lucas, stay behind me!" Sarah shouted, trying to sound brave, though fear radiated like a contagious wave. But deep inside, she was already teetering on the edge of despair. The figure loomed closer, its visage horrifying and distorted, a mockery of human form. Its claws flexed, elongating and curling, eager to grasp something warm and living. A rancid scent filled the air, like decay. "Join us, be with us," the whisper wrapped around them, a sinister lullaby that beckoned her children into oblivion. "Never!" Sarah spat, pushing against the door handle, but it held firm, as immovable as the darkness itself. The whispers toyed with her resolve, coaxing her to relent, to give in. "Just let go." Tears streamed down her children's faces, their breaths hitching in rising panic. She felt their fear, a mirror to her own. "Mommy, please!" Lucas choked, his face pale as moonlight. She took a step back, her eyes darting around, desperate for an escape route. The flickering light from the storm caught the edges of the room in jagged shadows. There, a glimmer of hope appeared, a narrow window, cracked but seemingly reachable if she could just run. She shouted again, the word faltering on her lips, almost swallowed by the cacophony. She wrapped her arms around her children, pulling them close. Lucas trembled, and Emily clung to her leg, looking up with wide, uncomprehending eyes. But between them and the window stood the dark spectre, its grin spreading like an infection. "You cannot escape it," huffed, a snarl balanced between mirth and malice, daring her to challenge it. "Go! Now!" Sarah screamed, shoving her children toward the far side of the room as she stood her ground. She had to buy them time, had to keep the darkness at bay. An instinct pulsated within her, fight or die. The air around her rippled, vibrating with unearthly energy. As she faced the spectre, shards of realization pierced through the veil of fear. It fed on despair, on hopelessness. "Stay together. Trust me," she called back to her children, who hesitated, eyes wide and pleading. The figure lunged, and in that moment, Sarah felt something shift in understanding. With every ounce of strength she could muster, she shouted, "You want us? You'll have to take us all." The shadows writhed, a thing of chaos, and as she spoke the words, warmth enveloped her, surging through her veins, igniting a fire of defiance. A ripple of light flickered from within her. Could she harness it? She slammed her palm against the door, willing it to break open, to break the chains binding them in this macabre theater. As the dark figure lunged again, teeth bared, Sarah could feel its shattering reality, could sense the thin boundary between fear and freedom peeling away. "Now!" she cried, feeling the heat bubbling to the surface, the pulse of adrenaline driving back the perpetual night. Suddenly, a brilliant flash ignited the room as a sound like shattering glass pervaded the air. The light pulsed, revealing the grotesque face of the figure, twisted in rage. It staggered back, howling in a pitch that rattled the walls around them. "Mommy!" Lucas shouted, bolstered by the light flickering around her. With courage ignited, Sarah turned to her confused children. "This is our chance. We have to run!" They darted toward the flickering window, but as they reached the edge of the light, the darkness surged back, furious and hungry. "No! Come back!" The echo of the figure's voice rippled around them, vibrating with an intensity that threatened to drown out her thoughts. Just before the shadows could ensnare them, Sarah spotted the front door shattering open, reality cracking, unleashing the brilliance of the outside world. "Go!" she urged, and they plunged through the threshold, leaving the darkness at their backs. But then, she felt it a tug on her soul, the shadows whispering still, promising to return as they landed in the yard, the chaos of his heart in her throat. Sarah turned back, dread pooling as she realized the figures were shifting. It was just the beginning. Will they ever truly escape, or is the darkness simply biding its time? The night air outside was eerie, punctuated only by the rustle of leaves shaken loose by the fierce wind. Tremors coursed through Sarah's body, a mix of adrenaline and sheer panic. Her children stood frozen beside her, their faces pale under the glow of a distant street light. "Mommy, what just happened?" Lucas whispered, his voice trembling like a fragile thread. Before she could respond, a guttural roar echoed from the doorway. The shadows, now swirling in a maelstrom of darkness, seemed to coil, caressing the ground. They gasped as the spectre rushed towards them, angry and determined. She could feel it clawing at her reality, eager to swallow them whole. "Run!" she yelled, her voice cutting through the mist of fear. They sprinted toward the fence that edged their yard, teeth clenching from the biting cold, hearts racing in unison. Suddenly, a blinding flash filled the air again, spilling a stream of light that bathed the ground beneath her. Sarah spun, disbelief flooding her mind. "What is happening?" she thought, squinting at the glowing shimmers. Then came the whispers, more frenzied now, crawling beneath her skin. "Come back, you belong to us," they wrapped around her like icy tendrils. Sarah clutched her children tighter, feeling the heat of their small bodies against her, the only warmth in this charnel storm. "Stay together," she commanded, feeling the weight of time shift, as if the very universe was drawing back its bowstring. They reached the fence, and with one swift motion, she vaulted over, landing on the other side with a jolt. Lucas and Emily followed with cries leaping from their lips. The safety of the sidewalk lay before them, illuminated in stark contrast to the chaos from which they fled. But as they stumbled away, the oppressive air pressed against them, relentless and suffocating. Glancing over her shoulder, horror clutched her heart where once stood the doorway. Shadows poured out like the floodgates had opened, spilling into the night. "Mommy, it's coming!" Emily cried, her voice breaking as she tightened her grip on Sarah's hand. In that moment, the darkness seemed to pulse, eager to reclaim its prey. The closer it drew, the more grotesque its form became, a swirling mass, shifting shapes, as if made of countless tormented souls writhing in agony. "Get to the street!" Sarah shouted, pushing her children ahead. The sidewalk stretched out, seemingly endless. They ran with desperation, their feet pounding against the pavement. But despair surged. Their safe haven was rippling with uncertainty. The shadows had taken on a life of their own, racing toward them. With each frantic glance back, Sarah felt the boundary between their world and the void thinning, fraying like a worn rope. Suddenly, the streetlight flickered violently, and everything went dark. Panic clawed at her throat. No, not here! The grip of darkness clamored for them anew, the dread clawing at her spine. "Mommy!" Lucas wailed as he stumbled, fear etched into every feature. Just then, the heavy air vibrated, and a low growl rolled through the night, resonating in her bones. The shadows coalesced into a singular figure, grotesque and looming, filling the void with its presence. It was impossibly close, mere steps behind them, every instinct screaming at her to keep moving. Sarah, the voice dripped with malice, tempting and prowling like a cat with its prey. "You cannot escape, you are ours." Fueled by desperation, Sarah looked back, her heart racing as she caught sight of the figure's maw opening wide, dark and hungry. Engineered terror flooded her senses. Could they really outrun the darkness? They surged forward, sweat mingling with the chill of night, lungs burning. "Just a little further," she urged. It was a lie wrapped in hope, tethering her frayed nerves. But then came a crack, a jolt in the night, as the ground beneath them trembled. And with a piercing scream that shattered the silence, everything twisted. The world around them warped, as shadow and light clashed in a violent dance, sucking them into a chasm of uncertainty. Did the darkness have the upper hand? Or could Sarah defy its call once more? As the children cried out in terror, the foreboding question churned in the air: what horrors awaited them now? The moment felt endless, as if time twisted and stretched into a dark abyss. Sarah's heart raced, pounding in her chest like a war drum as shadows clawed at their retreating forms. She felt a tug of visceral, magnetic pull coming from the swirling mass behind them, as if it wanted to drag them back into the depths of despair. "Keep running!" she gasped. The words erupted from her, raw adrenaline coursing through her veins. Lucas stumbled, almost falling. She caught him just in time, the cold sweat coating her palms. "Mommy! I'm scared!" he cried, his voice rising above the chaos. "I know, sweetheart. Just hold on to me." She pushed them forward, every ounce of her strength devoted to keeping them moving. With Emily tight against her side, they darted down the street, past silent houses cloaked in darkness, hiding secrets she dared not uncover. Then, the whispers returned. "You belong to us," they tormented her, slithering into her mind, clouding her thoughts. Her grip on the children tightened, their warmth anchoring her to reality. Suddenly, a blinding light split the night once again, momentarily illuminating their path. The light flickered and buzzed like a warning sign, and for a fleeting moment, she could see the shadow was no longer just a shadow. It shifted and morphed, revealing gaping eyes and a maw filled with jagged teeth, grinning wickedly as it morphed closer. "Run!" she shrieked, shoving Lucas ahead. But her voice was drowned by the growl, that monstrous, predatory growl that vibrated deep within the earth. It felt alive, hungry, lurking. They turned the corner, sprinting into a cul-de-sac, that familiar area suddenly feeling all wrong. Everything was too quiet now. Was it the drop in temperature? Or was it the palpable sense of looming dread settling over them? The stillness seemed sharper than the howl of the wind, choking her resolve. Mommy! Emily gasped, her little breath hitching as fear etched deeper lines into her face. There's got to be a way, Sarah mumbled, her mind racing. She spotted a neighbor's garage door ajar, light streaming out like a beacon. In there, she urged, guiding them toward the sliver of safety. They rushed inside, panting, hearts pounding. The garage was crowded with tools and a broken-down car, smells of oil and rust invading their senses. She grabbed a wrench, feeling its weight settle into her hand. It was a poor excuse for protection, but in that moment, it was all they had. Stay close, please, she whispered, peering through the cracks of the door. The sensation of the shadow creeping closer was overwhelming. Its presence clawed at her sanity, an insistent reminder of the inevitable. Then, out of the corners of her eyes, she saw it, the figure emerging into the flood of light from the street, twisting with maddening grace. Sarah returned to us. The tone was hypnotic, curling around her mind, wrapping tightly like a serpent. The shadow spread across the ground, reaching for her children. Her pulse quickened. She couldn't think, she could only feel. The warmth of her children clung to her as she braced for the next moment, the next painful choice. What would happen if they stayed? What would they lose? Mommy, Lucas's voice broke through the haze, a painful reminder of their fragile reality. As she stared into the maw of the night, the boundary of safety dimming, Sarah felt something within her shift. Maybe they could fight back. Maybe the darkness could be faced. But as she raised her weapon, a shriek reverberated through the garage. It was loud, piercing, filled with a horror that made her gut twist. The shadows surged around them, pressing in like a storm, and with every breath, she felt the insidious whispers grow louder. Join us, join us. In that moment, as dread flooded her veins, she could sense it. They would either submit to the darkness or break free, ripping together through the veil of uncertainty. The shadows raged like tempests around them, wrapping them in despair. Sarah's next move hung in the air, heavy and ominous, as the weight of the moment pressed down. What would she choose? Time blurred, and the darkness surged forward, eager for its prize. The choice was hers, leaving the question lingering: could they fight their way out? Or was it already too late? The shriek echoed loud enough to summon a primal fear deep within Sarah. Her heart thudded, each pulse a countdown. What choice was left? She couldn't let the shadows win. Mommy, please! Lucas whispered, his voice cracking. Sure, she urged, her own voice trembling. She peered through a crack, desperate to see. The figure was closer now. An abomination of old memories, shifting and twisting like smoke, its gaping eyes staring directly at her, pulling her in. It wanted her. She gripped the wrench tighter, feeling the cold metal press into her palm. Was this all she had to stand against such horrific darkness? A lump formed in her throat. But she couldn't falter. Not now. For Lucas. For Emily. Stay behind me. She turned to them, her eyes fierce with defiance, willing the fear to evaporate. The shadows coiled closer, a chilling fog enveloping them. Then, Emily breathed, a mere whisper. Mommy, what is it? It's nothing, Sarah lied. The word hung bitter in her mouth. The chilling truth was they weren't safe, they were bait. The voices circled their heads, growling and coaxing. Your time is up. Join us. Enough. She shouted, her voice ringing in the dim space, forcing her heart to believe in resolve. Just then, a surge of wind howled through the open door, as if in response to her defiance. The dark mass stuttered, hesitated. She saw it, then a flicker of fear in the abyss. Look, she said, urgency racing her words. We can face it together. We can fight. With determination, she stepped out from behind the door, wrench raised high. The shadows hissed, breath caught in her throat. How could she fight something that was born of nightmares? Sarah, no! Lucas cried, reaching for her, but she pushed forward, teeth clenched, eyes narrowed. The shadows danced around her, tendrils brushing against her skin, chilling her to the bone. Stay back! She yelled again, swinging the wrench through the air as if it were Excalibur, a weapon of light in this sea of despair. But the shadows merely laughed, a sound that slithered beneath her skin, setting her nerves alight. In that moment, her grip wavered. There was something about the way the darkness shifted, a sinister promise hidden beneath chaos, luring her deeper. It spoke of safety, of peace. All she had to do was let go, and it would be over. Join us, we will protect you. Horrified, she shook her head. How could she even consider it? But the pull was strong, and uncertainty gnawed at her thoughts, blurring reality. She had to think, to remember why she fought. Lucas, Emily. She yanked herself back to their faces, their wide eyes glimmering with fear and hope. I will never leave you! The figure jerked, a guttural sound clawing its way from the depth of shadows. It surged toward them, angry, primal. Its many eyes flickered like dying embers. The air shifted, a spark igniting fury within Sarah. She wouldn't let it take them. She charged forward, wrench raised, heart thundering as the darkness lunged. But everything shattered. An explosion of darkness erupted, consuming her. The raw fear of losing them tugged painfully, and she felt the wrench slip from her grasp, clattering to the ground like a lost promise. Mommy! No! In that moment, the world distorted, a mirage of twisted shadows folding in on itself. Join us! They shrieked, the sound overwhelming her senses, drowning everything out. Then silence. Sarah opened her eyes. She was alone in a different place altogether now, standing in the center of the cul-de-sac. Streetlights flickered overhead, illuminating an emptiness that felt more oppressive than before. Where were Emily and Lucas? Panic coursed through her veins. Had she failed? Reality twisted, and whispers echoed through the air. Find them or lose everything. With dread creeping in, Sarah took a shaky breath. The darkness wasn't vanquished. It was waiting, watching. But where had it taken them? Time slipped, but the urgency clawed at her heart. She had to find them. But what if the shadows came for her too? As distant whispers curled around her mind, Sarah could only wonder, what price would she pay to get them back? The pavement felt cold beneath her feet, grounding her in this waking nightmare. The streetlights flickered like the heartbeat of something long gone, a sinister pulse in the darkness. Sarah squinted into the shadows, desperate for any sign of Emily or Lucas, but only the thick fog of night answered back. Please, no, she breathed, fear creeping into her chest like ice. What if they were lost to the dark? She took a hesitant step forward, the sound of her shoes scraping against gravel echoing against the hollow houses. Each corner she turned held memories, their laughter, the way they played chasing fireflies, the safety that had once enveloped this place. But now, that safety seemed a cruel joke. A rustle from behind made her freeze. Panic surged anew, heart in her throat, as she turned around. The wind whispered secrets she couldn't decipher. Sarah swallowed hard, forcing her legs to move. Get to higher ground, maybe you'll see them. Shadows swirled like a storm, retreating and advancing in eerie synchrony. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding. Every house loomed like a tombstone, whispering her name. Emily! Lucas! She called, her voice trembling before disappearing into the night. Silence enclosed her, a suffocating blanket. Then, a flicker caught her eye, a glow spilling from the old park at the end of the cul-de-sac. It pulled at her, a beacon in the oppressive dark. She stumbled towards it, her heart racing. What if it was a trick? What if it was the shadows, waiting to ensnare her too? But she had to know. She had to try. The park came into view, its worn swings creaking, a haunting lullaby. The moon cast sinister shadows, elongating them into grotesque shapes. When she stepped inside, an unnatural chill danced across her skin. Mommy! Her heart leaped. Lucas? But the voice echoed, twisting, half real, half maddening. Mommy, help us! Desperation clawed at her throat. I'm here! Where are you? There in the light the voice beckoned, sending shivers down her spine. She followed the sound, moving deeper into the park. The source began to shimmer brighter, like a mirage of hope. But then the shadows inched closer, merging with the anxious rustle of the leaves. Don't listen! It was Emily now, her voice laced with urgency but tinged with the same dark invitation. Panic churned in Sarah's gut. The fear of the unknown shadowed her thoughts. "Emily, where are you? Mommy, please!" But the call faded, echoing into distorted laughter that filled the night like ice running through her veins. Clenching her jaw, Sarah quickened her pace. The flickering light pulsed like a heartbeat now, swelling and contracting, alive with something ominous. And then the voices, they multiplied, melding in a cacophony of whispers, "Join us!" "No!" she screamed, shaking her head violently, drowning them out. She pushed through the swirling mists, unleashed a primal roar of defiance, but all she could see was twisted shapes reforming in the corner of her vision, threatening, mocking. The source grew near, illuminating the park entrance. She could almost make it out, a figure drifting just beyond reach. "Help us!" it beckoned again, comfort mingling with danger, weaving temptation and dread. "Stop!" She felt like she was tearing apart. Her soul battled against the shadows clawing for her. But if it got Emily and Lucas, she would never let them down. With trembling hands, she reached for the light. It flickered violently now, a storm of darkness swirling at its edges, hungry to snuff it out. "Mommy!" The cry broke through the haze, and a full strength of determination burst through her. But just as she grasped at the light, it extinguished. Blackness devoured her, an overwhelming presence squeezing the air from her lungs. The cold invaded her bones, and then she heard it, the laughter once more. You can't run forever. Paralyzed in the grip of despair, she realized. The shadows had not merely taken her children. They had lured her straight into their trap. And then, as she sank into the abyss, a chilling thought struck her. How could she fight something that was now inside her? Somewhere, deep within the dark, a terrible truth awaited her. And it was only just beginning. The unyielding grip of darkness tightened around Sarah, reframing her reality into the absolute horror of despair. Panic surged once more, a throbbing pulse in her temples as she wrestled against an abyss that felt far too familiar. "Where are my children?" The question melded with her fear, echoing in the blank spaces of her mind. The laughter swelled around her, a malevolent symphony reverberating in the air, and she felt the shadows cloaking her in an icy embrace. It whispered promises of safety, weaving its way through her desperate thoughts like a dream you can't wake up from. But she was awake, more real than ever. "Get away from us!" she screamed, but her voice barely pierced the thickness of the fog that felt intent on swallowing her whole. Each breath she took was a battle against the dark, her certainty creeping away like a thief. In that disturbing silence, something shifted within her, a flicker of warmth igniting beneath the weight of despair. It was a ghost of a memory, a fleeting instinct to protect her little ones with all she was, a primal urge pulsing through her veins. "I will find you." She remembered their laughter, the bright, joyful chords that had once filled their home. It reverberated in her heart as she found the strength to stand once again, to fight against the shadows that encroached with every passing second. She might feel lost, but her love burned fiercely, illuminating the path ahead of her. "Lucas! Emily!" she called out, the words a keening wail that spilled from the depths of her soul. "I am coming for you. Don't give up." The shadows quieted, a fleeting hesitation flickering in the air as if surprised by her resolve. "They are there, they are alive," she thought fiercely, pushing forward into the darkness, armor crafted from a bond deeper than fear. A sudden gust propelled her onward, guiding her through the convoluted mists. The children's voices rose again, mingled with the sinister lullabies of lost souls, but she clung to the hope that tingled in her fingertips. The light was dim, but it was there waiting, fighting against the creeping void. Each step was heavy, every slab of pavement blurring beneath her feet, but the thread of connection she felt toward her children pulled her through the haze. "Hold on," she repeated, the affirmation fueling her drive. She stepped into a clearing, an ethereal glow enveloping her as she crossed the threshold of the park entrance, an unsettling calm taking the place of the discord. Here, she could sense something, a faint trace of familiar warmth beyond the shadows. "Where are you?" Then, as she squinted into the veils of darkness, the figures of her children emerged, flickering like ghosts in the static of despair. "Mommy!" Lucas shouted, his small body a beacon against the shadows. But around them twisted the dark specter, the embodiment of their fear, a twisted, featureless face looming ominously. No! The defiance surged anew within her. With renewed clarity she moved towards them. As she did, the dark mass swirled around her, teasing and taunting. "Join us, you belong here not today," she growled, lunging forward, extending her hand. Determination lit her path as if carved from the very essence of love. The spectre recoiled for a heartbeat as her voice shattered its grip. "Run to me," she urged, her heart an anchor drawing them back from the brink. Emily and Lucas dashed toward her, the distance closing, and with every step they took, the shadows retreated, reluctant to lose their grip. The dark figure shrieked in outrage, a hollow sound echoing through the night. "Run! Now!" Sarah shouted, her voice rising above the chaos, feeling the weight of purpose thrumming through her. They reached each other, her arms wrapping tightly around them, a fortress against the dark. Their warmth ignited hope within her once more. "We've got to get home," she urged, leading them toward the park's exit. Each step felt empowered, the shadows clawing at their heels but stumbling back, faltering against the light of their connection. As they burst forward, the spectre lurched, swirling to reclaim what it had lost. "You cannot escape," it wailed, the very ground trembling beneath them. "Keep running!" They dashed into the street, and adrenaline surged through her, carrying her and her children towards safety. The street lights flickered on, illuminating their path as otherworldly shrieks faded into the distance. "Mommy, I was so scared," Lucas panted, tears spilling down his cheeks, while Emily clung tightly to her hand. "We thought you were lost." "I'm right here, and I always will be," Sarah reassured, her voice calm, though her heart hammered loudly in her chest. As they sprinted toward the house, the darkness unfurled behind them, simmering with simmering rage, a vengeful spectre retreating but not vanquished. And as they reached their front door, Sarah realized then that while they had escaped for now, the battle was far from over. The shadows would always lurk, waiting for the moment of weakness. With hope swirling within her, she turned to her children, bending down as they all caught their breath. "We can't let them win. We are stronger together, always." As the three of them stepped into their home, Sarah felt the warmth of love pulse in the air, guiding them through the encroaching night. The house welcomed them back, bearing witness to their turmoil yet also their strength. They would heal, draw the light from within to keep the shadows at bay, together. But behind them, the echoes murmured through the town's depths, "One day you'll return," and with that, the night shifted, leaving them to face a dawn that would be bathed in endless possibilities. The doors shut carefully behind them, sealing the darkness outside with the promise of another day. But as they watched the sun rise, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling it wasn't over yet. She could feel it, the darkness would return. Now more than ever, she was ready. As the screen faded, "Remember this: a heart touched by darkness can find its way back. But it takes strength. It takes love. And it begins with you." So if you've enjoyed this story, you need to subscribe immediately so you never miss out on our next spine-chilling tale. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, show your love for these tales. And I want you to flood the comments section with your reactions, theories, and what you think will happen next. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Together, let us keep the light burning bright in our community against the creeping shadows.